What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason and Joe here, starting our deep dive of the year 1994. If you've never seen one of these before, basically, when we started the channel, we did a series called Albums of the Year, where we went through and we each listed our 5 favorite albums from each year from 65 all the way up to present day. We felt like that didn't give us enough opportunity to talk about things, and plus, we wanted to dig in to the years a little more and find things that we weren't already familiar with. So now we're taking a few months at a time to do different years. We spend a lot of time digging through, trying to hit a variety of genres and maybe dig into some stuff that we normally wouldn't. So now we're doing a top 25, an expanded list that lets us talk about more stuff. And, we're seeing if our old list has changed or evolved at all. So Joe is going to be up first. He's going to go through his albums in this episode. My top 25 list will be in a separate episode coming in a day or so. Basically, this is Joe's show. I'll be here commenting from time to time. But yeah, take it away.
Okie dokie. Thanks, Jason, for that stirring introduction. My 94 list, it's pretty much Joe core. Maybe a couple surprises. I think 94 is a good year. Maybe a little disappointing with new finds. I didn't discover too much that I didn't already know or wasn't familiar with, but a couple surprises for y'all. Starting with my number 25, actually. Wrestled with whether or not to put Richard Thompson's Mirror Blue on the list, but I basically have Richard Thompson in every single year that he releases a record. So I figured I'd give some new blood a chance here in 1994. So I'm going to go with Built to Spill, which will surprise some people. There's Nothing Wrong with Love. Wasn't familiar with this one. I'd heard one of them, I think the one from 99. And it was fine, but I really liked this one. It's kind of lo-fi sounding, but the guitar work really blew me away. It's prolific and twisty and strange, a little jangly, a little slightly disconcerting sometimes. To me, it felt like listening to television's Marquee Moon for the first time, just sort of updated for the 90s. And it feels like it really defines what guitars can be in music for like this generation. I can hear so many emo and indie bands that took this sound and ran with it. But the vocals aren't my favorite, but I like the lyrics, how they focus on little seemingly unimportant details, and there's a lot of cool songs on here as well. Number 24, I'm gonna go with a band most people probably haven't heard of, and I'm not putting it on here just because my uncle was in it, but Royal Jelly's self-titled from 94. It's just good old-fashioned rock and roll, classic Hendrix and Page inspired riffs all over the place. Vocals lean into the 90s. I think the songwriting would have fit a little bit closer to 1990 with like Black Crowes, sort of that classic rock revival. Might be a little behind here in 1994, the year of alternative, but I think these are really catchy, well-crafted songs, big anthemic choruses. They're not cool in any way, but the band just rocks, and it's a good time. It's a good time album. Number 23, I'm gonna go Nine Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, just creeping onto my list here. We talked about this in length during the Nine Inch Nails week. And this is a really ugly but beautiful album. Just the second from Nine Inch Nails, which is surprising. They started in '89 and they finally got around to album number two. Some great songs. Closer is a classic. That chorus just ridiculous. You hear that on the radio and you just change the channel immediately if you're with your mom or anybody in your family, because those are not lyrics you want to hear. Hanging out with them. It's such a killer tune. Those synth lines, that trembling final piano coda. It's just killer, hurt, all timer. It's just one of those classic tunes. And there's a lot of other good stuff on here. March of the Pigs. It's just, it's hard to take in. I didn't even listen to it for this re-listen, this 94 deep dive, because I feel like it's an album you only can listen to like once or twice a year, and I've already filled my quota on that. Number 22, another surprise. I think people will not expect this on here for me, but I'm going to go with Let Love In from Nick Cave. And this one surprised me because, Nick Cave, kind of a love-hate with him. I do like some of his stuff, but I've never really loved any of his albums before. Usually it's the voice and, kind of the dryness of it, but I thought this music was really, really good. It's violently beautiful. I think it's a good descriptor. Cave is ranting and raving like an Old Testament loving preacher on the pulpit. His voice isn't my favorite, but I like the way he uses it here, and I like the way it blends with the lush Baroque, classically inspired piano, some nice engrossing synths, throbbing bass, crackling guitar. It's just, right amount of chaotic energy. The loud, soft dynamics of Loverman are inspired. I really like the cowpunk insanity of Thirsty Dog, Red Right Hand, cinematic classic. Cool album. Very cool album. Very surprised. And these are all 4 stars, high 4 stars, um, at the moment. Number 21, we reviewed this on the channel for our classic album series that we seem to have forgotten about, but I am going to get Dookie on here from Green Day. It's such an influential album. Yeah, everything afterwards, all the pop punk and alternative and seemingly everything emo, everything kind of went off this template. And it's just got such killer singles, Longview, She, Welcome to Paradise. You know, it's great. They're iconic. You hear them on the radio still to this day. It's a little puerile. The humor is a little, low, but it's still a great album. I still love the playing. I love the bass work. It's just a really fun album.
So that is a very interesting first five. Shocked that Built to Spill gets on. That's so weird to me. I love to see it. Glad that it's there. Abandoning me in my Nick Cave distaste. I thought we were a unified front on that, but I also do like some Nick Cave. I don't want to come across like I hate Nick Cave. I think he has some interesting stuff, but I was not too into that record. Yeah, cool stuff. Royal Jelly, also good. People should check out.
Yeah, give my uncle some royalties if you listen to it. I think he gets a penny. So check that one out. It's 1994. People in the Discord, loaded with rap albums. We aren't that into rap on this channel, I hate to tell you. Every once in a while, though, some rap albums will sneak in, and I got one. And people are going to be upset because it's not Nas. Sorry, Illmatic's not on my list. I like Illmatic. It's like 30th. So that's as good as I can do. For me, the rap album of the year is Ready to Die from Notorious B.I.G. And I just don't love 90s rap as far as albums go. There's just so much filler. There's so, all the skits. It just doesn't quite do it for me. But if we're gonna go with a rap album, I want the most charismatic. I want the guy with the biggest personality, the best humor, the most bombast, and that is Notorious B.I.G. And it's just funny. People seem to be a little down on him, and I blame Rate Your Music's obsession with jazz rap for that. But if you look at most professional critics, Ready to Die is like always at the top or close to it. It was number one on Rolling Stone's last list. And I think it's pretty well deserved. An assured, personal, powerful debut. Is there filler? Yeah. Are the skits kind of lame? Sure. But singles, Juicy, Big Pop are all timers, and there's enough personal introspection here to make it a compelling, harrowing listen. And yeah, it's a very good album. It's definitely worth a listen. Number 19, another punk rock albums on my list here. People might be surprised to see it higher than Green Day, but Stranger Than Fiction from Bad Religion. This is all that punk should be to me. It's angry, the tempo rarely drops below breakneck. The bass is lively, the energy is fire. But there are a lot of hooks here. I think the band was at least cognizant of sort of the pop punk movement. Love lead off track Incomplete. It's just absolutely an earworm. And their re-recorded 20th Century Digital Boy is definitely one of the catchiest punk songs outside of Green Day. Love the guitar solo. They did it right. They made an album that's angry and punk, but it doesn't, skimp on the hooks. Number 18. This is the highest rated new album. We're still at 4 stars. Still at a very high 4 star, but not quite 4.5. But I got Velvet Crush with Teenage Symphonies to God, and of course named after Brian Wilson's, statement of what he was writing with the Beach Boys, Teenage Symphonies to God. And that, immediately piques my interest. And this isn't really Beach Boysy, but it's power pop that reaches back to the jangle of the birds, the crunch of Tom Petty. Just delivers, a set of American rock and roll songs. Get your head nodding, your feet tapping. The influences are on full display, and it definitely seems and sounds out of place amongst Britpop and alternative and grunge. But there's so much warmth in the tunes and the tones and the sound. And if you're going to cover Dillard and Clark's "Why Not Your Baby," you have my interest. Yeah, and they nail it. The pedal steel on that song is just sublime, and the whole album is a really cool mix of some of the classic old school American bands. Got the Jangle, it's great, way better than REM's Jangle. Um, Number 17. My last 4 star album. I'm gonna go with Wildflowers by Tom Petty. And it's Tom Petty, so of course it's good. He's got a ton of great singles on here. But everything is good. The album cuts are great. One of my favorite Tom Petty songs. And It's Good to Be King. You Wreck Me is great. You Don't Know How It Feels. And I think this album just feels a little more intimate than the typical Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers album. A little gentler, a little more low key than Full Moon Fever. Wildflowers lead off track, for instance, is great. Tom doesn't, he hasn't forgotten how to rock. House in the Woods and Calling Back to You have some big jagged guitars, great anthemic stretches, but I think it's the intimacy in the songwriting that really makes this one stand out. We get some Brit pop on here, baby. Not the last time. This one rose in my estimation. I got the Manic Street Preachers with the Holy Bible, which I had liked in the past, but I think I got it this time. Zooming up to 4.5 stars. And I think harrowing is a good way to describe this album. It was written by guitarist and lyricist Richie Edwards. Is basically he was self-destructing. He disappeared after the album and was just never seen again. Just probably dead. I don't know if they officially declared him dead just because he was missing so long. But in that light, it's even more powerful. Last Testament. It's vicious. It's mean. It's grotesque as the cover. Welcome shot in the arm for Britpop, I think. Takes equally from punk, post-punk, alternative, and it's a necessary antidote from some of the tweeness and lad uh, rock of Britpop of what it became. Great bass, it's almost like Steve Harris-esque. Vocals have a touch of Jello Biafra. It's punk and metal, and there's Sex Pistols influence. It's a big train wreck of styles, but the energy, anger, and venom make it all come together.
That's an okay set of five. I'm a little disappointed that Wildflowers is that low. Velvet Crush I had never heard before either, and it was pitched to me as like the most Jason Core thing of the year, like guaranteed home run. But I just thought it was okay. So
Interesting.
yeah, so we're 10 into your list, and we have two in common so far.
Interesting. Probably Notorious B.I.G. and Bad Religion. Number 15, I'm gonna go with Freddie Johnston with This Perfect World. Sometimes you just need some great songs, and Freddie Johnson writes great songs. Uh, the emotions run freely from the simplicity of Bad Reputation, pain, disappointment, alienation, failure. Those themes are all over this album, but they're all wrapped up in just really perfectly written pop songs. You got the cloud of darkness hovering just out of reach. But it's elegant, it's simple, really great guitars, both acoustic and electric. Freedy's playing the vocals. Nothing too over the top, nothing big and boisterous and loud. It's just really good singer-songwriter tunes. And that one's been a favorite for a long time. My mom really liked that one, so it probably rubbed off on me there. Number 14, I got more Britpop, Oasis, definitely, maybe. Britpop, Brit rock. It kind of gets lumped into the same category, but all these bands were very different, and nobody was doing it quite like Oasis. It's just meat and potatoes rock and roll. It's raw, it's unpretentious, it's unadorned. The Gallaghers wanted to be rock and roll stars. They wanted the trappings of fame and fortune, and they just go for it. It's supersonic, cigarettes and alcohol, live forever, rock and roll star, straightforward, full blast, good time rock and roll. A band putting it all on the line, and I think they pull it off. Truly, a whole is greater than the parts kind of crash and burn rock and roll album. Number 13, I think this one is going to be on almost everybody's list. It's a classic. I got MTV Unplugged in New York from Nirvana. And I just think this is one of the best examples of a band just completely reinventing itself, showing itself in a completely different light. I think if anyone had doubts about how good Kurt Cobain was as a singer and a songwriter, this blew those right away. The restraint and creativity on display here is amazing. Uh, just the songs that they cover, The Man Who Sold the World, Lake of Fire, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? Excellent, transformative tunes. And Kurt just gives a raw emotional performance for the ages. Number 12, a album assuredly not to make Jason's list, not in a million years. I got Under the Pink from Tori Amos. And I love Little Earthquakes, but I think this is like when Tori became Tori. These arrangements, they're twisty. They combine gorgeous playing and dense lyrics in unforgettable moments, and they're just all over the place. The way she flies off into like these non sequiturs on Cornflake Girl, for example, basically out of nowhere, you get a bridge with Mary Clayton. I don't know why or how, but to me, it feels like the work of a mad genius tying it all together. I love God, the song, that shrieking guitar, that menacing piano and bass. And I always say this feels like it birthed an entire genre of female songwriters like Fiona Apple, who just have a direct line to this song. And I think this whole album. Number 11, get some Pearl Jam on here. Jason will have this. Vitology. Pearl Jam's weird because they kept rejecting their own success, but they still kept it together on their third album. Getting weirder and weirder. I mean, song like Bugs, like, the hell is that? But there are some really great songs on here as well. All Timers, The Cathartic Corduroy, Elegant Better Man, The Soft, Simple Perfection of Nothing Man. I don't think they were ever this good again, never this together. But the emotional resonance is remarkable. Just songs you want to sing and sway along to, or bob your head a little bit.
Okay, so two more in common in that set of five, but maybe not. I mean, the one I think is obvious, but one is maybe not the one people think.
Interesting. Tori Amos finally breaking through. All right, let's go 10 to 6 here. We got Weezer, number 10. Might be a little low for people. It's a great album. I might just be a little tired of it. Also, it's Weezer, and every year they fall further and further from the light. But hard to believe there was a time when they were cool, and it was 1994 for a brief and well-earned time. Every song here just fuzzed out, perfectly crafted power pop gem after power pop gem. I think people underrate how good the guitar work is on this album, but it absolutely rocks. They're so huge, they're so loud. Some really great guitar solos like on Buddy Holly, and whatever the magic was with Rick Ocasek, he brings it out in the decidedly geeky Rivers Cuomo. Songs reference D&D and surfing and Buddy Holly. Plenty of songs about being awkward with girls. The hooks are incredible. The songs, Holiday, My Name is Jonas, Say It Ain't So. They're all timers. They're classic tunes, and it's a great album. Number 9, I got a little metal finally on here. Euthanasia from Megadeth. And every time I listen to it, I like it a little bit more. It doesn't stray too far from Countdown to Extinction template. It's really not thrash anymore, but it's thrash adjacent metal. It's full of brutal riffs and sky shredding solos, angry and surprisingly good and well thought out lyrics. I always think Dave Mustaine is a underrated lyricist. It's not quite Peace Cell's level of speed and technical excellence. What it loses in that department, it adds in pure catchiness, I think. Reckoning Day, Pummeling Rift, but a nice, softer, elaborate bridge. Train of Consequences is probably my second favorite. This song sounds like a train song after Locomotive Breath. A Tout le Monde, slower, more careful riff, but still a great big chorus on it. And there are touches of alternative and progressive rock, but it's still Megadeth, still angry, still has great guitar from Mustaine and Marty Friedman, killer bass from Dave Ellefson. Just a really well crafted set of songs in the metal genre. Number eight, I'm gonna go with Purple, Stone Temple Pilots. Yeah, SCP was never the grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana imitators that critics say they were. Those were lazy and cheap shots. Creep, sure, it sounds a little bit like Nirvana. Plush, sure, a little bit of Pearl Jam on it, but that's not who they were. And on Purple, I think they go even farther from that sound, really rely and lean on the unique aspects of the band. Scott Weiland's extremely flexible vocal range, the 70s riffage of Dean DeLeo, the unmatched bass guitar of Robert DeLeo, one of my favorites of all time. Uh, Songs like Interstate Love Song, Big Empty. Nobody had a song in the 90s like Interstate Love Song. It sounded like nothing else. A pretty clean break from the grunge imitation from their first album. And, their faster, harder songs, the punchy Unglued, Tricky Vaseline, Heavy Loungefly, Psychedelic Leaning still remains. I think they all hold up really well to this day. Number seven, we're to five-star territory here. And this one, I guess it dropped a couple spots, but I think I like it even more than I did back when we did the Album of the Year series. I'm gonna go throw in Copper from Live. It's so uncool, and Live are just a completely uncool band because it's so overwrought and melodramatic. But I mean, it's the 90s, so what do you expect? It's big music kind of transformed to the 90s. You get hints of like, Bono's preening from the early 80s. And I think the lyrics and the music work well. There's plenty of songs about injustice and trivial matters of life and death. There's childbirth and poverty and racism and white supremacy and song like White Discussion. And then there's a song about a waitress who's a bitch, but still deserves a tip. Human kindness right there. And I just love the sound. I love the bass playing. I love the drums. And Ed Kowalczyk, people don't like him, but he gives so much into his performances with the shrieks and the whoops and the power. I think it's a quite underrated album at this point. And my number six, no one's gonna like this one, but I love it. Under the Table and Dreaming, Dave Matthews Band. From the first notes, first song of Make the Best of What's Around. They just integrate all this prolific playing. Everyone here is just incredible player. I know people don't like Dave Matthews' voice, but he's a great guitarist. Leroy Moore is a killer saxophone player. His solo in Best of What's Around is amazing. Boyd Tinsley is a great violinist. Carter Buford, incredible drummer. They just cook. They kill. A lot of the songs, they haven't quite stretched into that jam band territory. I think, Satellite, Ants Marching, What Would You Say? They're very succinct and catchy and full of hooks. I mean, they're not 12 minutes kind of sprawling, boring jam sections. They're really well-crafted tunes. And yeah, it's kind of like modern yacht rock. People discount it because they're all really good players and they're talking about, racism and, big weighty topics in a lot of situations. But I think it's a really great album.
I think my biggest surprise in that set is that Purple is so low. Was that in your original top five?
No.
No,
My original
interesting.
top five was mostly the same. I think I had live in the top five, and that's really the only difference.
All right, well, let's see what took Live's place.
Number five, Jar of Flies from Alice in Chains. It's the best EP of all time, but it is an EP and it's only like 30 minutes long. And I could use like three more tracks to make it my number one. I think if they combined like Sap and Jar of Flies, it would probably be my favorite of the year. But there's nothing wrong or missing from this short LP, long EP. The way the band was able to combine such beauty and such darkness in a song like I Stay Away, which one of the first songs I ever heard on the radio that like blew me away. It was just one of those just like life altering kind of tunes. Um, the sound of a song like No Excuses is just unbelievable. The drum, that little flittering drum part, the big acoustic guitars, it's nothing like Dirt. Like this album is almost the complete opposite. But the way they're able to channel the emotion into softer tunes is really impressive to me. And the harmonies of Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley, just that otherworldly combination. Just love it. Love hearing it. Can't get enough. Number four, this is the album that took the spot of Live. Sorry, Live. Sorry, Ed. But I got to go with Dog Man Star by Suede, which moved up from 4.5 to 5 stars. And I just love the ambition of this album, the chutzpah to pull off an album this big in 1994, this grand. It just feels really worked on, really ornate, just like painstakingly so. I think every song on here is excellent. I don't know why I never had it at 5 stars before, but I love it. I love Bernard Butler's guitar work. It's subtle. It's sometimes it's a little too hidden in the background, but he's just doing some really excellent work. Really reminds me of what like Radiohead would do in '95. I think he's very influential there. I love the bass from Matt Osmond. The drums are great, really unheralded rhythm section. And I love Brett Anderson's vocals. They don't sound like anything else. That glammy, almost effeminate vocals. He can hit all the notes. And it's not the usual Britpop. It's not cheeky. It's not like laddish like Oasis. It's very epic. Prog tendencies on the Asphalt World, which is a nearly 9 minute swirling number filled with some great organ fills, a really extended solo guitar work. Just really cool. We Are the Pigs, New Generation. They bring in a little Bowie, and then the two of us in Still Life. Dramatic ballads, big builds, crashing finales. It just has everything I want in music. And I think it really stands out in '94. Number three, I almost dropped this one down. And then I listened to it again and I raised it back up even higher, I think, than in '94. We got it with Grace from Jeff Buckley. For whatever reason, I had like little little criticisms in my head that kept gnawing at me about the album. I thought maybe it wasn't balanced enough. Maybe there wasn't enough big sort of crashing tunes to counter the softer stuff, but I was wrong because this album is perfectly balanced and it's hard to think of another, like cult songwriter, a son of a cult songwriter who lived up to the expectations as fully as Buckley did. For a debut album, it just feels completely mature and lived in and measured and meaningful. There's just nothing in the world like Jeff Buckley's voice. And that, I mean, that's great, but that wouldn't mean anything if there weren't great songs as well. Grace was my winner song of the year in '94, is amazing. Lover, You Should Have Come Over is just so soulful. You get the Sturm and Drang and Eternal Life, which is a great sort of just explosion of energy towards the end of the album. The crunch of Last Goodbye, their strained and beautiful lilac wine. It's just all perfect. It sounds amazing. Andy Wallace does a great job producing. I love the churn of the acoustic guitars throughout, and just a brilliant album. It's almost perfect in every way. It's incredible. just a couple albums that I like a little bit more, including number two, Super Unknown, Soundgarden, and I almost made this my number one because it's just such a great album. It's super long. It's like 70 minutes long, and it never dips, uh, at least, in my mind. Almost every song on here has, a memorable riff or an incredible vocal part or just something that makes it a must listen. This isn't, this isn't quite as naughty and twisty as Bad Motorfinger was, but this is just Soundgarden at their most, just heavy, bludgeoning. The riffs are plentiful. You still throw in some odd time signatures in Spoon Man, My Wave. They still hit with the force of a hurricane, but they throw in stuff like the psychedelic Black Hole Sun, more alt rock anthems like Fell in Black Days and The Day I Tried to Live. Love the closer like Suicide, slow boil of a tune, killer showcase of the power of the band. Cornell runs the entire gamut of emotions, and his voice still incredible, one of the best of the 90s. And yeah, it rules. It's Soundgarden's magnum opus, one of the great grunge and alt rock albums of the 90s. But I'm sticking with my number one. I'm sticking with Park Life. And I struggled with this top five, the order, but I listened to Park Life again and again, and it just has the best songs. And before he was infected by American indie pop, Damon Albarn was an incisive, clever painter of character sketches and vignettes of British life, very Ray Davies, both lyrically and musically, I think. And there's a huge breadth of material here. It's, Soundgarden maybe a little one note to be my number one. This is not a one note album. Park Life is just all over the place. You got the disco lead off of Girls and Boys, which has one of my favorite bass lines from Alex James. You have the cheeky Park Life, the Beatlesy End of a Century. You got great horns on Bad Head. You got harpsichord coming in on Clover Over Dover. The Stringfield Triumph of To the End. They throw Letitia Sadler from Stereolab on there to do a little French. I don't know what she's saying, but it sounds sexy. And the Piece de Resistance. This is a low. Their most heartrending, tear-jerking work ever. Graham Coxon. I think he's a really underrated guitarist, inventive and clever on everything. And it's just a magnificent, fun, heartwarming, heartrending, everything type of album to me. I just think it has the best songwriting, the best songs, and it continues to be my number one for 1994.
All right. So only one of those last of your top five are on my list at all.
I think we know.
So we end up with 8, I think, in common.
Eh, that's not bad. I think it's a little low though for a whole deep dive, right? I feel like we're much more in sync in the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, not a bad list though. I think mostly what I expected. All the surprises were kind of early on. I think 94. It's an okay year. We'll get into that more in my video, but I think if you're a rock fan like we are, there's just like only so many that you're gonna have.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in the lack of like new discoveries. A couple down at the end, but nothing that was challenging, my top 10 or even my top 15, really. Those are kind of just set in stone and, you know, there's plenty of other good albums. There's just nothing like really great.
All right. Well, that's Joe's top 25. Let them know what you think of it in the comments. Drop your own list there as well if you'd like. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you check back. Might be 2 days before my video drops, we'll see, but it'll be coming up soon, so keep looking out for that. And yeah, otherwise we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.